Before my first communion, I clung to doubt as Satan spider-like stalked the orb of dark surrounding Eden for a wormhole into paradise. God had formed me from gel in my mother's womb, injected by my dad's smart chute. They swapped size until I came, smaller than a bite of burger. Quietly I grew till my lungs were done. Then the Lord sailed a soul like a lit arrow to inhabit me. Maybe that piercing made me howl at birth, or the masked creatures whose scalpel cut a lightning bolt to free me. I was hoisted by the heels and swatted, feted and hauled around. Time-lapse photos show my fingers grow past crayon outlines. My feet come to fill spike heels. Eventually I lurched out to kiss the wrong mouths, get stewed and sulk around. Christ always stood to one side with a glass of water. I swatted the sap away. When my thirst got great enough to ask, a clear stream welled up inside. Some jade wave buoyed me forward, and I found myself upright in the instant, with a garden inside my own ribs aflourish. There the arbor leafs. The vines push out plump grapes. "You are loved," someone said. "Take that and eat it." Mary Karr, Disgraceland, published in Poetry Chicago, January 2004, and taken from the anthology, The Open Door, 100 Poems, 100 Years of Poetry magazine, edited by Don Scher and Christian Wiman. And as you can imagine, from such a august and splendiferous institution as Poetry Chicago, this anthology is filled with lovely lyrics. We will share just a few. The generator hums like a distant ding in sach. It's early evening, and time, like the dog it is hungry for food. And will be fed, don't doubt it, will be fed, my small one. The forest begins to gather its silences in. The meadow regroups and hunkers down for its cleft feet. Something is wringing the rag of sunlight inexorably out and hanging. Something is making the reeds bend and cover their heads. Something is licking the shadows up and stringing the blank spaces along, filling them in. Something is inching its way into our hearts, scratching its blue sails against the wall there. Should we let it in? Should we greet it as it deserves, hands on our ears, mouths open? Or should we bring it a chair to sit on and offer it meat? Should we turn on the radio? Should we clap our hands and dance, the something dance, the welcoming something dance? I think we should, love. I think we should. Charles Wright, Bedroom Story, March 2004. Not less because in purple I descended, the western day through what you called the loneliest air, not less was I myself. What was the ointment sprinkled on my beard? What were the hymns that buzzed beside my ears? What was the sea whose tide swept through me there? Out of my mind the golden ointment rained, and my ears made the blowing hymns they heard. I was myself the compass of that sea. I was the world in which I walked, and what I saw or heard or felt came not from myself. And there I found myself more truly and more strange. Wallace Stevens, Tea at the Palace of Hoon, October 1921. The cold, remote islands and the blue estuaries where what breathes the restless wind of the inlets, and what drinks the incoming tide. Where shell and weed wait upon the salt wash of the sea, and the clear nights of stars swing their lights westward to set behind the land. Where the pulse, clinging to the rocks, renews itself forever. Where, again on unclouded nights, the water reflects the firmament's partial setting. Oh, remember, in your narrowing dark hours, that more things move than blood in the heart. Louise Bogan, Night, October 1962. The poems are sharing their pages with notes and excerpts from letters and perhaps even emails from the poets to the editors. Here's one from Basil Bunting, September 1972, perhaps appropriate in the current political atmosphere. There's not a soul who cares twopence for what I or any other poet thinks about the war. We are experts on nothing but arrangements and patterns of vowels and consonants, and every time we shout about something else, we increase the contempt the public has for us. We are entitled to the same voice as anybody else with a vote, no more. To claim more is arrogant. Indeed. Arrogance and humility. Two sides of the same coin. Often beneath the wave, wide from this ledge, the dice of drowned men's bones he saw bequeath an embassy. Their numbers, as he watched, beat on the dusty shore and were obscured, and wrecks passed without the sound of bells, the calyx of death's bounty giving back a scattered chapter, livid hieroglyph, the portent wound in corridors of shells. Then, in the circuit calm of one vast coil, its lashings charmed and malice reconciled, frosted eyes there were that lifted altars, and silent answers crept along the stars. Compass, quadrant, and sextant contrive no farther tides. High in the azure steeps, monody shall not wake the mariner. This fabulous shadow only the sea keeps. Guess that one? Hart Crane at Melville's Tomb, October 1926. It's unlikely that a decent poem is in me tonight, and I understand that this is strictly my problem and of no interest to you, that I sit here listening to a man playing a piano on the radio. And it's a bad piano, both the playing and the composition. And again, this is of no interest to you, as one of my cats, a beautiful white with strange markings, sleeps in the bathroom. I have no idea of what would be of interest to you, but I doubt that you would be of interest to me, so don't get superior. In fact, come to think of it, you can kiss my ass. I continue to listen to the piano. This will not be a memorable night in my life, or yours. Let us celebrate the stupidity of our endurance. Charles Bukowski, A Not So Good Night in the San Pedro of the World, September 1993. I see many influences stemming from that poem. Another note from Denis Levertov, 1965. A religious devotion to the truth, to the splendor of the authentic, involves the writer in a process rewarding in itself. But when that devotion brings us to undreamed abysses and we find ourselves sailing slowly over them and landing on the other side, that's ecstasy. Any fool can get into an ocean, but it takes a goddess to get out of one. What's true of oceans is true, of course, of labyrinths and poems. When you start swimming through riptide of rhythms and the metaphor's seaweed, you need to be a good swimmer or a born goddess to get back out of them. Look at the sea otters bobbing wildly out in the middle of the poem. They look so eager and peaceful playing out there where the water hardly moves. You might get out through all the waves and rocks into the middle of the poem to touch them, but when you've tried the blessed water long enough to want to start backward, that's when the fun starts. Unless you're a poet or an otter or something supernatural, you'll drown, dear. You'll drown. Any Greek can get you into a labyrinth, but it takes a hero to get out of one. What's true of labyrinths is true, of course, of love and memory. When you start remembering. Jack Spicer, August 2008. Postmortem publication, I should imagine. And something of a surprise to me. Between Westminster and sunstruck St. Paul's, the desert has entered the flea's belly. Like shut-eyed, half-submerged Nile bulls, the buildings tremble with breath. The mirage of river is so real, bodies drift in it, and human rubbish. The main thing is the silence. There are no charts for the silence. Man cannot penetrate it. Till sundown releases its leopard over the roofs, and women are suddenly everywhere, and the walkers' bones melt in the coughing of great cats. Ted Hughes, Heatwave, December 1963. The white chocolate jar full of petals swills odds and ends around in a dizzying eye of 4 o'clocks now and to come. The tiger, marvelously striped and irritable, leaps onto the table, and without disturbing a hair of the flower's breathless attention, pisses into the pot, right down its delicate spout. A whisper of steam goes up from that porcelain urethra. Sanson, it seems to be whispering, curling unerringly about the furry nuts of the terrible puss, who is mentally flexing. Ah, be with me always, spirit of noisy contemplation in the studio, the garden of zoos, the eternally fixed afternoons. There, while music scratches its scrofulous stomach, the brute beast emerges and stands, clear and careful, knowing always the exact peril at this moment caressing his fangs, with a tongue given wholly to luxurious usages, which only a moment before dropped aspirin in this sunset of roses, and now throws a chair in the air to aggravate the truly menacing. Any guesses? Shea Jane by Frank O'Hara, November 1954. Clive James, in August of 2009, contributed this note. Clive James, he who has recently done his translation of Dante's famous poem, I believe. Didn't even know he was a poet. Possibly there is such a thing as being so concerned with the self that one loses sight of the poet's privileged duty, which is to be concerned with everything in the hope of producing something, a poem, a stanza, even a single line that will live on its own, in its own time. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. Isabel, I could vainly map a happy vale of dolls and balls, and tell the most various bears a really tale. But lap to lap the fretting Isabel, pale in her skinny pout, her wishing well is full of wishes no one can unspell. Knots legs, knots arms, knots hair, the world of tots smiles like a pumpkin into my despair. I see the lightning in her summer stare, and I would not by any bribe be kin or kith to share in all the crying she will bring to bear. Forecast by Ruth Stone, May 1953. Men at 40 learn to close softly the doors to rooms they will not be coming back to. At rest on a stair landing, they feel it moving beneath them now like the deck of a ship, though the swell is gentle. And deep in mirrors they rediscover the face of the boy as he practices tying his father's tie there in secret, and the face of that father. Not sure if we had a little pause there or not. Apologies if we did. I was miserable, of course, for I was 17, and so I swung into action and wrote a poem. And it was miserable, for that was how I thought poetry worked. You digested experience and that literature. It was 1960 at the show place, long since defunct on West 4th Street, and I sat at the bar casting beer money from a thin reel of ones. The kid in the city, big ears like a puppy, and I knew Mingus was a genius. I knew 2 other things, but they were wrong. As it happened, they were wrong. So I made him look at the poem. There's a lot of that going around, he said. And sweet baby Jesus, he was right. He laughed amiably. He didn't look as if he thought bad poems were dangerous, the way some poets do. If they were baseball executives, they'd plot to destroy sandlots everywhere so that the game could be saved from children. Of course, later that night, he fired his pianist in mid-number and flurried him from the stand. We've suffered a diminuendo in personnel, he explained, and the band played on. A diminuendo in personnel. William Matthews, Mingus at the Show Place, October 1991. The apparition of these faces in the crowd. Petals on a wet black bow. Ezra in a station of the metro. April 1913. 100 years ago. 15 seconds ago. The eternity of poetry. God bless it, and God bless you. However you conceive of that immense consciousness of deity, or not. Gord's Poetry Show, August 2013. Bye-bye.